Welcome to our first episode of the 2025 Thought Leader webinar series sponsored by Woodbury University's School of Business. Dr. Joan Marques serves as Dean and Professor of Management at Woodbury University's School of Business. She holds a PhD from Tilburg University and an educational doctorate from Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Education and Psychology, and an MBA from Woodbury University. Dr. Marques teaches courses related to leadership, ethics, and organizational behavior in the MBA and BBA programs and presents regularly at academic and professional workshops. Her research interests focus on workplace spirituality, ethical leadership, Buddhist psychology and management, and leadership awareness. Her work has been published in a large range of peer-reviewed journals and popular media resources. Joan has authored, co-authored, and co-edited 40 books so far, all of which are aimed at enhancing readers' awareness and improving the quality of their lives. Her most recent single-authored book is Gain: Positive and Mindful Self-Leadership Toward Purpose-Driven Insights, published by Springer in December 2024. In this webinar, Dr. Marques will present Courage, Paving Our Personal Leadership Path.
Thank you, Francesca, and welcome from my side to everyone who took the time to attend this session. Courage has been near and dear to my heart. I feel very honored to be here and share that with you. It's a presentation, believe it or not, that I prepared, I think around 2012 or 13. And off and on, I presented it to my students over the years. And every time I did, I got a very, very good response. And I realized that that is not for nothing. You know, people must really think that it makes sense in leadership regards. So I thought, why not share it with you today? So please allow me to share my presentation mode. And hopefully that will go well. And I will, let's see if I do have the right format open, because I see two of them open. And let me know if you see the presentation started. Did the presentation mode start? Okay, thank you so much. So I was enamored by this picture, and maybe this was one of the pictures that encouraged me to start this presentation. I love it how this gentleman is pulling the road. He's just paving his own path in life, regardless of what the situation is. As you can see, he's walking through a lot of grass and probably mud, but he's paving the way, and not only for himself, but also for others to come. And I thought that that was such a courageous act, such a wonderful way of depicting what life is about. And so I came up with courage. And the focus of my courage presentation is that we should pave our personal leadership path. I left the word professional out here deliberately because I feel that leadership starts with you as a person. If you cannot lead yourself, you will not be able to lead others. And so if you can pave your personal leadership path, you will probably become a role model to others, and you will be able to pave or help pave theirs as well. So let me first bring you back to what was written on the folder, the flyer. It said that I would share today 7 considerations that can help us exert mindful and balanced performance toward continuous professional and personal excellence, or personal and professional excellence. And I added, and self-reinvention, because I feel that that's sometimes something we overlook. But if we don't reinvent ourselves, we will be left behind. And so I thought it was an important note to add there. Why should we even reinvent? Well, there are so many reasons today, and have always been. There's always change ahead. We can't help but have to, if we don't change, we will be left behind. That is nothing new here. There's no rocket science needed to have that insight. The speed of change is another aspect that we have to be mindful about, because it comes at us sometimes when we are completely unprepared and definitely underprepared. I think we are always underprepared for the changes that occur in our lives. Then there's also intense competition. No matter what you do, and no matter what field you are, you will always encounter others who can do it better, who do it differently. And it doesn't mean that you always have to fight them, but you have to just always try to be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday, because that competition is not waiting. There are always challenges in life. That's another reason why we need to reinvent to overcome the challenges. And sometimes it's just because we can get bored with the status quo, right? Sometimes you are there and you think, oh my gosh, I've been there, done that. Can there be something new already? So that is another reason why we should reinvent. So we need to make sure that that light bulb keeps going on in our head. I also include this little girl here because I think she's cute, but also because she asks a good question. Is change a threat or is it an opportunity? It depends on how we decide to look at it, of course. We can decide that change is a threat and then we feel fearful and stressed and insecure and depressed and victimized. And I'll tell you, even if you don't see it that way, sometimes with some changes that occur, you can't help but feel that way, at least for a while. But what we should always try to do is to muster excitement, to gain inspiration from the changes that happen to us, even if initially they don't feel all that great and they may not look all that great. I think we need to try and not give up trying to see the light. Confidence, zest, and being in control of at least the part that we carry, and that is ourselves in life. Now, that all said as an introduction, let's move on to courage. In 2001, I had to read a book from Tom Peters. Tom Peters is a loudmouth. He's a business guru, but he's good with what he's doing, in what he's doing. I had the honor to see one of his presentations in Pasadena, and he was very impressive. I think he grew older now, is a little more quiet, but that book that I read was titled The Brand New 50. I still have it. It's like a deck of cards. That's how often I read it. Tiny book. But one of the things that stood out in that book to me was that he said, you need to see yourself as you incorporated. I am me incorporated. Why? Because it takes you out of a victimized mindset. When you are you incorporated, every professional and even personal connection you engage in is one at an equal plane. You incorporated are working with, in this case, Woodbury Incorporated, or whatever the incorporations are that you are interacting with. So no longer are you the small employee working for a larger boss. But if you see you as you incorporated, you also see yourself as a business. And one of the things that I've learned is that we're always in sales. Whether we believe it or not, we always have to sell ourselves. We may not always do it consciously, but it's there. We're always selling ourselves we're selling our opinions, we're selling our perspectives, we're selling it sounds rude and it sounds maybe crude, not rude, but crude, but it is true. We always sell ourselves, particularly our perspectives in professional settings. So I liked this statement. And so with the little piece of luggage that I carry today, I put down as my name tag, Me Incorporated. And what we're going to analyze, what I have in my little luggage, is courage, my little dolly. And courage is a beautiful word in and of itself. If you are courageous, I would say, everything in life requires courage, especially when we're dealing with transitions, when we're dealing with new developments. Today it's AI, and there are so many different opinions about AI. I have just started gravitating to it, realizing that I cannot leave myself behind. I heard a great statement about that, and I'm not going to talk a lot about AI, but one of the statements I learned or just recently heard at an AACSB conference, I believe, is a lot of people fear that they will lose their jobs to AI, but that's not true. if you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose it to somebody who knows AI. And so the best thing you can do is know AI, because your students are way further than you are already. If we have a lot of people in the business world and in the academic world here amongst us, we know what we're talking about. So anyway, courage is a beautiful word. Life requires that, but I want to use courage as an acronym. Those of you who know me well know that I love acronyms. And so I will use every letter in the word courage as having a different meaning. And I want to start with the C. And I chose for the C, choice. Why? Because I am very, very convinced that we always have a choice. I very often hear people saying, well, I had no choice. I had to do this. What they mean is the alternatives were not appealing. But you always have a choice. Even between life and death, you have a choice. Even if it's that grave and that difficult, there is a choice. You always have a choice to go right or left, or to the front or to the back. That's why I put a crossroads here for us to see. And I came up with my own equation here. This is not statistically proven. You don't have to look it up anywhere. This comes from my brain. So, but what I believe is that life is only 20% destiny. The quality of your life is only for 20% determined by your destiny. The rest is choice and attitude. Because I've seen some people who would have to be miserable with everything that happened to them. But because of their attitude and because of the choices they made, they were still people that had great confidence in their life and felt very happy about their life. So it's the choices that you make, the attitude that you have, and then a little bit of the destiny that determines the quality of your life overall, in my opinion. Now, to dwell for one more minute at the choices. See, we never make choices with 100% information, because we never have 100% information um, uh, on our plate. So every time we make a choice, it is based on either past experiences, our intuition, trends that we see, and that's when we make choices. And it's only when the choice has been made that we can get an idea whether that was a good direction or not so good. And I always say, I don't necessarily think that if you decide or determine and find out that the direction wasn't that great, that you have lost. There comes your attitude. And your attitude can determine how you work around the choice that you made, or how you change or shift the choice that you made into something positive. So choice, I think, is a very important subject to keep in mind when we're thinking of ourselves as leaders. We always have a choice. And I have a story about it, because that is what I do with this presentation. I have stories with everything. I've learned that from my dear colleague, Satinder Diman, that a story always sticks better, if you tell a story with a point that you try to make. So the story that I have for choice is this farmer who had a donkey, and every morning he and his donkey and him were the best friends. He had no wife anymore. His wife passed away many, many years ago. The farmer was already old. And so every morning they would go and sell the products from the land on the market. But one morning, the farmer woke up and he heard his donkey braying. And he couldn't find him right away. And when he finally found him, he saw that the donkey had fallen in a dry pit. And he thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this animal out of here? It's only me. I'm not that strong. The nearest neighbors are so far from here. I don't know what to do. He thought for a while, and then he went and got his shovel, and he started shoveling dirt and throwing it in the pit. And the donkey thought to himself at first, this ungrateful, you know what? After all these years that I served him, now he's trying to bury me alive. That was the first choice that he had in his mind. And then he made another choice. And he thought, you know what? Every time that he throws this dirt on me, I can shake it off and step on it. Shake it off and step on it. Shake it off and step on it. And indeed, after doing this all day long, he could climb out because, of course, the dirt got higher and higher. And there's actually two versions of the story. One version of the story says when he got out, he gave the farmer a swift kick. That is when he was still in the bad mindset. But in my version of the story, he was happy. And you see, the story ends with a smile. So the donkey was happy, the old man was happy. And what this story illustrates is the choice that we have in determining what we do with situations that we're in. So the C of courage stands for choice in my analogy, my version of the story. Now, let's go to the O, open-mindedness. I think that open-mindedness is something that we very often think we have, and then we remain closed-minded. When are you closed-minded? When you decide based on history, based on maybe a religious mindset or a cultural mindset or an ethnic mindset that you're not going to work with certain people or in certain places or whatever, based on past experiences. Whereas if we are open-minded, we can overcome the traumas from the past. And the story that I have here is of an elephant. I got this story out of a book from my dear friend where she made the illustrations, Nan Ray. And it was a book about an elephant named Suma, who was abducted by monkeys, big monkeys, when he was still young, almost apes. And he was tied to a tree. And the rope was not very thick, but he was tied to a tree. And every time he tried to get loose, the monkeys would throw coconuts, in this case, maybe not coconuts, maybe avocados, because that's not a coconut tree, but they would throw fruits on his head. So he started associating the effort of getting loose with pain. And many years went by. So I assume there was water nearby. There was enough stuff that he could eat nearby. So after many, many years, the monkeys died away or they moved away, and Suma was still tied to the tree. Every year, several elephants would come by and ask him, hey, come with us. We're going to the meadows. It's nice. And he would say, no, 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 I can't, because he had traumatized himself and couldn't escape out of the mindset that he couldn't leave there. So unfortunately, the story ends sadly. He stayed there until he became really old and passed away because he allowed himself to be fearful of change and to not be open-minded that things change over time and that you have to change along with them. Now, the U stands for usefulness. I believe nothing in life is wasted. So this is definitely, we're talking about leadership. We're analyzing courage as an acronym. Usefulness, in my opinion, I very often hear, sometimes even my colleagues, to say, I wasted a lot of time with that particular lecture to go to. It was so useless. And I believe that in life, actually, nothing is wasted. Nothing. Life is like a puzzle. We just sometimes don't know that that experience that we're having now will be a fitting piece in the puzzle in the future. And then we'll have an aha moment. I love this statement from Ben Carson. There is no such thing as useless knowledge. You never know what doors it's gonna open for you in the future. And so if you ever had the idea that you're wasting your time with things, students sometimes say that to me, oh, I went to this class and I learned nothing. I think, no, it wasn't useless. You have to create the use for it. This is where you are the conductor of your life. And the way I always liken this is a patch blanket, because I say, every little piece of the patch blanket has a place, and it may have been considered useless once, but look at how beautiful it ultimately becomes and how much warmth and peace and serenity it gives to the ones that use it. Now let's move on. And this is, I thought, since we were talking about an elephant earlier, let me also show a patch blanket with an elephant, how beautiful that can be. Okay, now the R, courage, reality check. This pertains to the fact that very often we want to profile ourselves different than we really are. We feel that we may not necessarily be accepted the way we are. And so we put up a front that is not really us. So this story is about the preacher who was expecting a group of people from headquarters in town. And he had this beautiful yard by his parish, beautiful. But you know, the trees were always dropping their leaves, and it was beautiful. It was peaceful. Everybody was, kids were playing there, animals were running back and forth. It was a nice yard. But he was so nervous with the people from headquarters coming that he hired a crew to come and clean it all up for him because it had to be neat, it had to be perfect. And I'm sure you know people like that too. I can say I loved her dearly, but my mom was like that. Whenever people came, it had to be perfect. And so indeed, by the time that the crew left, it was perfectly green, the grass, and it was spotless. Now there was a neighbor sitting and looking. And as you can see, the neighbor's yard has quite some leaves, right? So the neighbor was looking, and the neighbor was a good friend of the preacher. And he said to the preacher, "Oh, it looks nice, but I think there's something missing." So the preacher got all into panic because it would be just 20 minutes before the people from headquarters would be there. And so he said, "Oh, what is missing? What is missing?" So the neighbor says, "You know what? If you help me over, I'll come and fix it for you." And the preacher helped him over. And this is what the old man did. He came and he gave a good shake on the trees, and the leaves fell, and he said, "Now that is perfect again." And then fortunately, the preacher took it the right way and said, "Indeed, that is the natural way it is, and that is how we should respect it." And fortunately, I mean, the people from headquarters were so enamored with the yard as it was. So that is just an example of try not too hard to not be you. Be yourself, be authentic. And then the A in courage. I believe that if we want to carry ourselves as leaders, we need to also consider our attitude. We all have ups, we all have downs, we all have moments that we frown rather than smile, no matter what everybody else says to us. So, as a story about attitude, I have this situation that happened in the olden days. You know, the days when cities still had big walls around them with gates. And there was an old man always working outside the gates. So he saw a lot coming and going. So here the old man is cleaning his yard, working in his garden. And every time, regularly, there would be people coming by who were wondering about that village, that little town that was right outside of his yard. And so one day came a young man, and he stood there and he said, "Old man, um, how are the people in this town?" And the old man said, "Well, before I tell you that, you tell me first how the people are where you came from." And he said, "Don't even start. They were terrible. We always had arguments. These people didn't know what the heck they were doing. I just could not stand them anymore. I just had to leave at a certain point." So the old man says, "My friend, the people here are way worse than where you came from. I would just move on and go to the next village maybe, because here these people are worse." Next day comes another young man, different look, different person. And he says the same question, "How are the people in this town?" And the old man says, "Same question. Tell me where you came from, how they were." And this man says, "Well, they were perfect. This was wonderful how these people were. I mean, every night we had campfire. We were building houses together for each other. You know, we were cracking jokes till the late wee hours. It was fantastic." So the old man says, "Well, my friend, the people here are, of course, way, way nicer. So if you thought you enjoyed it in the old town, come here and you'll see that these people are better." What is the moral of that story? You carry your attitude wherever you go. And reality is a reflection of your attitude. Whatever you have inside, that is what will encounter you. Now let's go to the G. We're almost there. Courage. The G, I chose to be for genius. Because I feel that unfortunately life has slapped us on the wrist so many times that we forget the genius that is in each of us. And it is there. I put this little picture of a dandelion that I took once on a morning walk because I thought that the dandelion was a genius standing there where all the others had fallen off, but it was standing there holding its own. There's a beautiful story that I picked up from Sir Ken Robinson, one of the most viewed TED talkers. Sir Ken Robinson passed away since then, but he actually was once at Woodbury. And I really liked the way he was telling stories. And the story that he told about the genius that we all have in us is he was emphasizing that kids still have that genius in them. And the story that he told people was that there was this little girl who was in kindergarten and she was drawing. And all the kids had to draw something. So the teacher said, draw something you like. And she started drawing, and everybody was done at a certain point, but she was still drawing and drawing and drawing. And the teacher said, what are you drawing? What are you still doing? She said, I'm drawing God. And the teacher says, but nobody knows what God looks like. And she said, oh, they will in a minute. And so that is to show that kids have in them still that genius that has not been kicked, that has not been slapped. And so here is probably her picture of how she depicted God, a beautiful heart that she made. And then the last item in courage is education. Last but not least, and education doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go back to college if you don't want to. Education just means learning, teaching yourself, educating yourself. It can be anything. Education can come in the form of experimenting or getting information from the internet or planning or, college too, reading books, developing your own wisdom about life, insights, thinking, meditating, going for long walks, seeing things and understanding more of things. So education comes in so many different forms, and it is very good for our own sense of leadership. Here is one point that I wanted to add to that. When we think of educating ourselves as leaders, as the leaders of our lives, we need to realize that we should not just learn new things all the time, new habits, new lessons. Sometimes, very often actually, we have to also unlearn the things that no longer have a place in our lives. The old heuristics with which we made decisions, the shortcuts that we used to make decisions, they may have been outdated. So we should regularly, at least every so many years, take a hard look at how we make decisions, why we do the things we do. Because sometimes we may be stuck in old habits that no longer serve a purpose and no longer serve our own well-being. So that is what happens when you engage in courage. You have a choice. You should be open-minded as a leader of your own life. You should realize that nothing is wasted, that everything is useful. Engage in a reality check. Make sure that you stay authentic to yourself and know that authenticity today is not the authenticity from yesterday because we change all the time. So the authentic self that you were 10 years ago is not the authentic self that you are today. The A for attitude, know that life is a reflection of your attitude. The G for genius, please bring that out again. Life will always bring it down, but you have the stamina to bring it out again. Please do. And E, educate yourself. And so if you do that, if you keep yourself to courage and see yourself as me incorporated, you will continue to enrich your life. You will see opportunities where you first may have seen threats, and awareness will be on the rise. That then is my story, my little leadership, my thought leadership insight. And all I can say at the end of this presentation is Tashi Delay, which means I honor the greatness in you in Tibetan.